everybody. Thank you for listening to or signing up to listen to the first PMO Flashmob webinar. And what we're going to do today is look at PMO Trends 2015-2016. Basically, PMO Trends 2015-2016 is an amalgamation of different stuff that's happened over the last year, but it's also started to make me think about 2016 as well. So it's kind of like a combination of lots of stuff. And all this is things that I've listened to over the year, some of the things we've done at Flashmob, and to really just bring it all together so you can have a look at different aspects of PMO. And just to say, again, the webinar is being recorded and it will be available afterwards online as well, and you should be able to get a copy of that. So let's crack on and let's have a look at PMO Trends 2015-2016. And one thing that we can't get away from, and listen to a lot of this stuff over the last year, no doubt we're going to carry on listening to a lot of it over the next few years as well. I suppose this next few slides is about what I picked up when I was at PMO Symposium in Arizona, some of the better bits that I saw, but just judging on that 3-day conference in America where hundreds of people attended, nearly every single presentation was about portfolio management, portfolio PMO. So we can't ignore it. So even though you may not be working in that kind of space, let's just remember that portfolio management also includes being able to execute the strategy, which is through projects and programs, which of course PMOs are also well involved with. So it's programs and projects, but the focus has been very much portfolio. Now, if you're not up to date with this kind of stuff, you should have been able to or already seen the PMI thought leadership pieces. The 3 reports that you can see there were launched at that symposium. You can find them on PMI's website. They're free to download. If you literally just type in PMI portfolio management, it will take you straight there, and you should have a look at those 3 reports. And of course, here in the UK, we also have started to talk about portfolio management, and hopefully you've seen the thing that Flashmob actually did in December, and the report that came out afterwards, which is available to you on the website, and you should see that in Inside PMO on the website. It's for us in the UK, and you will see as we go through the presentation, it's about trying to get beyond the headlines of what is portfolio management, what can it do for an organization, because actually we want to get into what's the realities of it, and what do people actually really need to be doing within PMO, whether you're in portfolio type stuff at the moment or not. So some stuff there to have a look at. But from the symposium, one of the presentations that I really enjoyed was by a couple of guys from Deloitte who actually put together one of those reports. And the reason that I liked it was that it started to make the subject feel a little bit more simpler than what I've been hearing before in presentations I've seen on it before. And for them, talking about portfolio management, these were the 3 headlines that came out of their research. And the interesting thing about the symposium, but also through other things that I'm hearing and people that I'm talking to, but number one actually is you keep hearing it all the time, we need to keep it simple, we need to keep it simple, which kind of tells you that so far it feels very complicated. And I think that's something that came out of our own PMO lunch thing that we did, that it is complicated. So how do we make it more simple? One of the things that we also came out of this presentation for me is just how important the culture is. So for some organizations, portfolio management may never be successful because of the kind of organization that it is, and does it have the right kind of culture to be able to embrace and use portfolio management? And of course, the third bit there is kind of signaling to me that do we have enough strong capability in this area? Because one of the things that we discussed over the lunch was, well, here's portfolio management, here's the easier, relatively easy bits of portfolio reporting, but what are the other capabilities that are needed? And that level of detail, I think, is going to be flashed out through a combination of people being or deemed to be thought leaders in the area, but also people like yourself that are working on the ground. Because actually what we found from the manager's lunch was that actually some of this stuff is not coming from theory, it's about your own personal experiences being in PMO for a while, but also being able to take a risk and being innovative, because actually the way to do successful portfolio management has not been well defined. So who better to start to think about how it can be defined and how it works than the people that actually work in that kind of area. Now this view was really nice and simple. It's portfolio management, program management, but how it all sits together. And I'll just show you that in a little bit more detail so you can see it a bit more close up. But essentially what they were saying in that presentation, that the parts that you initially focus on, if you're starting this kind of stuff from the get-go, is the area on the left, which is the demand management piece. So this is where you have to think about concentrating your efforts in order to start laying the foundations of successful project portfolio management. So the demand management needs to be thought about, which could be a relatively new area for people in organizations in PMO. The other parts that he also said that has to be really looked at and to be, I suppose, have a strong baseline or foundation is the project program part, which is the initiation, the execution, and the project closure. And then the only one element of those 9 boxes underneath is looking at the resource management piece. So this is from their report based on 20, well, according to them, up to 20 years experience of advising organizations in the States on how to do portfolio management. In his experience, it's the demand management piece, it's getting the PPM piece, and also the resource management piece. These are the 3 areas that he thinks that before you can start to really do portfolio management well, these are the things that kind of have to already be in place. So it's an interesting view. It's a really simple diagram, and I think it pretty much summed it up for me in the most simplistic way. What they also said was, in part of that presentation that jumped out to me, and this is kind of something a little bit different to portfolio management, not necessarily related to it, but when I saw this slide, the first thing it said to me was, actually, this is how people within PMO can define their career. And what I mean by that is that people who are working within PMOs generally, by and large, probably fit into 3 of these scenarios. So you could be a PMO person that is used to setting up PMO in any form, project, program, portfolio, from scratch, i.e. there are no processes or tools. Or you're a person that goes into an organization or works in an organization where they have something, but it needs maturity. And then the third bit is where things are going wrong. And I thought it was quite a nice way to show it as to the different kind of areas where you can work within a PMO. And I think the vast majority of people are probably in the middle. But actually, if you're thinking about long-term careers and potentially these are the other 2 areas that you could think about in terms of your own specialisms within the PMO. So that I just wanted to just pull that one out as part of the whole thing because it's still part of the same presentation. So the second thing that was that stands out to me is that there's a hell of a lot of thought leadership stuff, which is good. But where are the practical details coming from? I mean, we've already said that actually a lot of this stuff is going to come from the practitioners, the people who have been doing this well beyond the time when things like the management of portfolio book was announced, the P3O stuff, well before that, people have been working in PMO already. So the practicalities, right, may very well come from the practitioner rather than all the thought leadership, because there is that level of detail missing. I mean, this is an example of the kind of stuff that was going on at PMO Symposium, which is great. We kind of get that portfolio and strategy execution are the thing at the moment that people are talking about. And a lot of this stuff is, yes, it's great. Yes, it would be great to have. But where is the level of detail around where can we get optimal allocation of human resources, for example? What is strategic risk management? and what is it not only in portfolio, program and project office, but what does it mean within my specific organization? So there's a lot of detail that is not there, which to me means that 2016 hopefully starts to have some of this stuff falling out. Another example from the same from PMO Symposium. Again, there's a lot of this is what you should be doing, but actually we need some help here on how to do some of this stuff. So the how is still missing. Number 3 is about the basics, and this list here came from a PMO Flashmob that we did in 2015. As a reminder for every single person that comes to a PMO Flashmob is different, and they generally are different, mainly because of the organisation that they work in and how they choose to run their programs and projects and portfolios and PMOs. But fundamentally, what we recognised was, and I'm just make it a little bit bigger for you, was that PMO people by and large do the same kind of functions and services. But what we weren't too sure about, well, what are those things and what is it that they're doing? Because it's okay to have organizations to be suddenly getting their head turned with portfolio management because, hey, it's new and it's sexy. But actually, we need to make sure that we still have good program and project delivery in order to be able to make portfolio management work anyway. So let's not forget the basics of what PMO does and what PMO can do well and what it can start doing and stop doing if need be. So these were the things that we generally just put this list together. And you can get this list as well by taking part on the website. And we've only got 127 people that have taken part in it so far. And generally we got them to fill it out just so we could have a better idea about what are the most important functions and services in organizations today. Is it what we think they are, or is it something different? We didn't know, because it hasn't been really that kind of report in that kind of detail. So this has been ongoing. We've not really put it out there. We're not forcing people to, please take it. But every so often, we keep putting these things out, but we've got more people, here's the subject. So we're interested in understanding what are the basics of PMO and what do we need to be thinking about in the future. So this has come from that survey online, and you can come and take part yourself. You will also get that spreadsheet that I've just showed you on the slide before. You will always get you will also get that as a download as well. So it's kind of like a dangle carrot. From those surveys, this is the high-level figure of asking people which kind of PMO that they were working in or working in now. And when I first saw this, and it has actually been backed up by other sources as well, but actually Program Management Office is one of the most popular PMOs in existence today. We also saw that figure from the ESI report into the state of PMO. I think they also showed that Program PMO was the most popular. So this is the kind of background that we're asking people, where are you? When we have more people taking part, we can start to do some cuts in terms of functions and services that these people do. But at the moment, high level, this is what people across all of those scenarios, portfolio, program, project, not in a PMO, all of those, this is the high level figure at the moment, just based on 127 people, as to the basic services that are the most popular within PMOs today. I mean, I'm dying to find out from a portfolio management office how big the percentage is for administration. I'm just so keen to find out whether actually portfolio management officers manage to leave behind the so-called dregs of administration, or do they actually still have to do quite a bit of it? I mean, I'm intrigued by that. I'm sure you might be too. So this is the high level of what people are doing. So just taking the top 3, it goes down and shows you, well, what are they doing around governance? And that gives you a breakdown of the kind of things. So it's quick and dirty. Here are some of the main things that we pulled together. That's what it looks like for the kind of governance related services. For the reporting, slightly bigger because we do a lot of reporting. It's probably one of the main things. You can see there that that's the kind of reporting that is by and large what people are doing. Again, I'd like to get to that position where we can do cuts of this across different types of PMOs to get that profile. because actually that helps us not only in our own careers, but it also helps the wider marketplace when it's thinking about what is a PMO person, what does a PMO do, because there is confusion around that. I'm sure you're aware of that many people still find it hard to understand the concept of PMO, never mind what kind of PMO you work in and what you do. So it can only be good from that perspective. So trending for next year, I think we need to get that level of detail and see where that helps us in our PMO careers. Last bit around administration, you can see there, those are the top things that people are doing around administration. So do portfolio people stop setting up meetings? If they do, who takes it on? This is the interesting thing. I've had conversations with people over the last few years about, do people really do administration in PMOs still? Aren't they getting away from that? When actually, in my experience, it's still one of a big job, because if a PMO doesn't do it, who does do it? And I don't think we have a clear enough answer for that. So as much as we want to get away from admin secretarial support, it's like, well, who does it in our place? Number 4, what we found over the last year again, and it keeps popping up and it will continue to pop up, is about resource management and the issues that we have in PMO around resource management, again, regardless of what kind of PMO it is. So we did a mini masterclass on this, just to start somewhere. We couldn't tackle every kind of problem that we may have in that area, because ultimately we didn't even know what challenges people had. And look at this. This is the challenges that people had. 77 people in a room on one night have come up with these challenges around resource management. So your people were hoping to walk away from that session having cracked all their resource management challenges. I think we're going to have to look at this again. It is huge. It's a huge subject, and it's starting to become a lot more prominent in conversation because of that slide there we showed about the portfolio management thing from Deloitte, that resource management has to be something that we start to get to grips with better than we do now. So for me, I would like to see resource management being something that as a community of PMO people that we should be starting to tackle in more detail. And if that means that we only take one of these challenges over the next year, I think we need to start looking at that in more detail. And I'm sure as you look at this, you'll probably be able to recognize some of the challenges that you have too. So remember that PMO Flashmob is a community for PMO people. We do not have the answers. The answers are in all of you. And all we're trying to do is get the answers out of you so we can discuss them and start to think about how we can improve or talk about them more or so on. So actually, watch out for 2016 when we tackle this subject again, because you can see it's huge. So as I mentioned before, not forgetting the basics of PMO. One of the other things that came out in one presentation in Arizona that I saw was the remembering that projects are still important, that we shouldn't get our head turned by, this brand spanking new sexy portfolio management stuff. And the two bits that specifically were pulled out were project estimating and resource management. Have a look at this in a little bit more detail, so not off the photo, this is from the presentation. So you can see here, they were talking about a strategic PMO, which is generally by and large a portfolio PMO. But one of the things that they were talking about there was about the whole planning and governance side of it. So you can see the white parts of it, which, the bits that are in black, right from the create and select, and, there's a lot of the kind of portfolio terminologies there. However, the white writing is a reminder that actually, if we are doing our resource capacity planning well at project program level, it stands to reason that if we're going to move it up and look at from a portfolio point of view, that we're going to be in a better position. So it's a reminder that actually getting resource management, scheduling, estimating better, not only from our PMO point of view in terms of reporting on that, but actually in terms of helping our projects and program managers to do better at those kind of things. And you'll see this later on when we look at the slide that talks about what PMOs, what organisations want their PMOs to do more of, and that will come up in the slide. The other thing that's really clear, and I'm sure a lot of you probably feel the same way about this, is that we need technology and tools in order to do some of the stuff to the to the data and the information side of our jobs. However, we are never seen to be ready because our processes that we need in place in order to be able to put the technology on that never seems to be quite ready. And I think that's why a lot of PMOs don't really have the kind of tools available to them, which is why we're still excelling and we're still doing macros and all that kind of stuff. But it's interesting to note that it is still the same in a lot of large organisations across the globe. I mean, this example here was again was taken from the guys at Deloitte, and you consider that they're making probably a lot of money doing this kind of stuff for organisations, but you can quite clearly see that this is nothing special in terms of them being able to look at the portfolio planning. So it's an interesting conundrum that we have is we need technology if the data gets more complex and the information that we need to get out of that gets more complex. However, where is the tipping point? And I think with the market literally exploding with lots of different types of PPM tools, I think now we're making our job even worse because it's, well, what do we pick? So not only do we have to be ready for tools, but wow, the choice is huge. So, but again, from the messages from the conference in the States was a lot of people are suffering from this, so you're probably not suffering alone. The other thing that I really liked about presentation at Arizona and got me thinking, and there weren't a lot of them to be fair, but I really liked this one because it felt a lot more practically minded, and I think our PMO people like to be practically minded when it comes to stuff, not always talking about thought leadership stuff. So the methodology presentation was actually called Methodology Makeover, and I thought this was a fantastic idea because actually I've never really seen anybody or heard anybody talking about this, and I wonder why. And I wonder if people do this without realising, or they do it behind closed doors of their organisation and don't think it's anything particularly special. But I'm telling you it is. Let me just explain what it is. The presentation was done by a lady who worked in IT healthcare, and she talked about their methodology change over 11 years. And she talked about the different stages. There were 3 stages. So she started with this slide just to emphasize the fact that we think that methodology has a major role to play. And then went on to describe their journey. Okay, sorry, not 11 years, 10 years. And this to me was a really interesting insight that I'd never really seen before, especially not put like this. And she talked about the methodology first of all in their organisation when they first started really getting into maturing projects and programs. And I think a lot of people will recognise this in that there are, getting to the point where there is standardised deliverables, and this is the kind of thing when you're putting together tools and templates, bastardising things like Prince2, having the method having a life cycle, all that kind of stuff. So that the initial years. And then she went on to talk about their maturity, then making a move to be more controlling. And I think we all recognise as PMO people that we get this rep for being a project police, controlling freaks, all that kind of stuff. But she recognised that, this is all about the policies, the standards, the controls, the audits. I'm sure a lot of you will recognise this. In fact, a lot of you are probably in that kind of place now. And I think, to be fair, a lot of people are. But it was the third bit what got me thinking, which is she can see a clear definition between what they're doing. And now what we've decided to do is start to think about, well, we know that a lot of their project and program people are starting to skip some of the method anyway. And that comes through either ignorance or being able to just be a good program and project manager and use the things that work for you and your organization and for your projects and programs. However, for them in terms of a PMO, like what is the point of having a method that doesn't really get followed and is too controlling and doesn't allow people to be able to well, do what they do best, which is to manage projects and programs. I mean, we're talking about experienced program and project managers in their organization. So they thought about, well, let's just focus on the core things and give more freedom to how people are able to do different elements of the project. So actually they consciously went through a methodology makeover. And I got thinking about this. I'm thinking, well, I wonder how many people within a PMO today actually sit back and think, is our method all right? Do we need to think about this? Do we need to change this? Do we need to, or is it something that kind of happens because, it's just one of those things that, yeah, somebody's requested a change, it made sense, let's have a look at that. But the other thing that she also pointed out was they're getting into this more of this lean, agile thing as well. And for them, it was okay, we have a central method, we have some local deviations because different types of departments needed the deviations. And now we have different types of methods that people are kind of playing with. But what do we as a PMO, where do we stand? Because we are supposed to be the custodians of the method. So it almost feels like, the tail wagging the dog. So I just thought it was a really interesting insight as to her presentation as to the need to do this, and I think it to me it also means that actually the method is the PMO, and it's your project. It should be a continuous improvement. So interesting things, but also they mentioned lean. So last year we also looked at the agile PMO because it's something which is kind of hovering here in the distance. People are, playing with it in certain parts of their organization. The PMO is questioning, where do we fit with this? What do we need to do, if anything? And we started that conversation, the agile PMO, with the DSGM. You can see that presentation on the website. Just go back on PMO Flashmob and have a look for agile PMO, and it's there. The but for obviously you might have seen the next thing we're doing in London is to go beyond that and say, well, what's the practicalities? What is a PMO doing? So we found somebody that is doing it. So let's find out what's going on there. But again, it feeds into this whole thing about the method and owning that method. So to kind of summarize of portfolio management for me is that it's difficult. So we're back onto this thing again. But we keep getting this mixed message of, well, we know we need to keep things simple, but it's difficult. And actually, if we look at a lot of these bullet points here that we've picked out from the sessions, but also some of the research, is, a lot of this stuff is, can it come from PMO? Does it have to come from, senior management? Or, as we found out when we talked about this at the PMO Managers Lunch, we talked about portfolio management. Is it a top-down, bottom-up? But actually we came into a new kind of conversation, which is portfolio management can also be done sideways, which is an interesting perspective. But basically it meant that actually it's the PMO itself, if it's the right kind of PMO, can start instigating some of the portfolio management stuff. Because what we found is that actually a lot of the senior execs, if you need the commitment and support, actually a lot of them don't actually really understand what portfolio management is either. So it's a bit of it feels like a messy knot, and I think we'll start tugging at some ends. But where it is and where it's going to go, it's an interesting one for me. And my question when we had the lunch was, what we're going to do when we realise that portfolio management is not the answer? What is the next? Because if it is difficult, in my experiences, when things are difficult, people tend to not bother because it's too hard. So it was just an interesting perspective, but these are from I suppose the collection of things that I'd pulled out and the inferences that I've got from people talking about portfolio management recently. This came from again from another flash mob that we did in probably mid 2015, and so this is back in the UK. So this is about people that are working here in the UK, about what they were being asked to do more of. And you can see there the top few things. The one that's really interesting for me, and it's a training one, the third one. I don't think we do enough around this area in terms of talking about it. Um, it's often a line on a job spec, mentoring and supporting project managers, training them, helping them. But what does that mean? What are we actually training and helping them in? Is there like a top 5 list of things that project managers can't do but need PMO help? I don't know. It's an interesting part of the role, which obviously there's many interesting parts of our role, otherwise, the vast majority of you wouldn't be in this profession in the first place. But it's what are those things that people are expected to do training in? And are there areas that the PMO is naturally strong in? Or is it an assumption that because we're in a PMO that we're able to do these things? And number 3, do we actually make good trainers? Are we actually the right people to train others? So things that PMOs have been asked to do more of, you can see they're asked to do more portfolio management. But equally, on the bottom part of that is what are PMOs starting to do? You'll see portfolio management there. So I think it gives you a good indication of where we might be in terms of portfolio management. And the thing that always gets people talking is the automation part of what we're doing, which is around the data, the information. There's still something that an organisation wants us to start doing more of, which I always find really interesting, because it's like, okay, so can you release some purse strings then so we can do some of the automation? Because at the moment we don't kind of have that infrastructure. What I would like to see, I'd love to see, in fact, if not next year, but certainly over the next few years, is that somebody comes up with an ideal PMO infrastructure as to what kind of tools we need and in what form and for what reason. Because I haven't really seen that. And because there is so many tools out there, I'd like to see a combination of some of the big tools, but also some of the freebies that are available. Because, why should you be spending a lot of money on this? Why not use free things to help you put the process together before you potentially go out and spend a hell of a lot of money on it? So it's yes, we'd all like to see more automation, but what does that really mean, and how do we do that? And what do we need to get our house in order before we can even begin to contemplate doing that kind of thing? The other thing that I'd really liked discussion-wise over PMO Flashmob in 2015, we had a session about change management. And the reason why was, I think it had come up, actually, this session was before that, and it got me thinking again. It's like, well, I don't actually really understand what PMO people are doing in the role of change management. So if you take change management being the science of, i.e. change managers, change leaders, all that, change agents, all that kind of stuff, what is the role? Is there a role? Can the PMO do anything, or actually is it hands off? It's nothing to do with us. And we just started again the conversation in 2015, just trying to understand what is change management. And I spoke to a lady that did the presentation, who's been in this field for years, and I asked her the question, what can a PMO do? And she just had no idea. No idea what a PMO could do, actually. But now she's gone off to think about it. So it's, are we making more work for ourselves? But actually, I think, well, I love change management as a subject. I find it really, really interesting. I think anything where PMO can get involved in interesting work can only be a good thing. So again, change management, is it going to be a thing? Don't know. Let's see. That's the whole point of Flashmob, is to ask the question, to poke the sticks, and let's see where it gets us. One of the things I keep hearing all the time is simplicity. You saw it in the first presentation. There were presentations all the way through Symposium. I've seen umpteen presentations over the last few years. It's about simplicity. Is that I think sometimes we can be guilty of overcomplicating some of the stuff that we do. And one of the things that presentation-wise that I really liked from Symposium again was this from the guy from HP Enterprises, who's there, the head of that whole division, which was a huge multi-million-dollar thing. What I really liked about it is his simplicity of what he thinks a business-driven project portfolio PMO should be doing. And yes, it is simple. But the thing that I really liked was just the simplicity of, well, surely we should be able to have a seat at the corporate table if that's what we're going to be doing, if it's around strategy. But it's just that the reminder that just having constant delivery practices and improvements around some of this stuff, accountability for some of this stuff. I know the guy did a really simple, from a businessman rather than a necessarily a PMO person, was that from his organization, from HP's point of view, they completely reinvented what they were doing with PMO, and it took them, bearing in mind how large that organization is, it took them 3 years to get from the initial concept of this is how we need to be doing our projects and portfolios better, up to the present day where they feel like they've kind of cracked it. So 3 years, keeping it simple. But the interesting thing for me is, from an interest perspective of a PMO person, which you are, can you see or that any elements of what you do as a PMO that could really do with the simplicity? And I think it's an interesting one. I mean, I'm always intrigued to know how many people actually do things like feedback and customer satisfaction type stuff. Because as a PMO, we should be changing and moving with the business as that moves. But equally, we should also be trying to understand from our customers, our program managers, our project managers, our senior execs, exactly what it is that they don't like about us because of the complexity involved, that something that we might be doing. And I just wonder if whether you have the insight as to, okay, today, I'm going to have a think about what we really do. And this element always seems to be a bit of a sticking point with a lot of people. Let's focus on that, and that might be a part of a methodology thing, which comes back to the methodology makeover. So it's all nice and neat, but simplicity thing, you know, it's a it's an interesting one. It's a simple one, but it's to get you thinking. I thought about top 10 PMO trends, and only because I'd read one that somebody had put out and I thought it were a bit rubbish. I didn't actually think it said very much that were new, and I did think it was probably coming from the minds of people that actually work in PMOs every day. These 10 that I came up with are all based on conversations with people that I have at Flashmob. I kind of listen to conversations and ask those questions, and then kind of put that information away somewhere. And I'm thinking, I'm going to wait and see whether I hear this from any other PMO people that I meet again and again. And this is where the 10 really came from, is from you. And all I'm doing and all I've ever done with Flashmob is just take what you're saying and to hold the mirror back up to you. And this was the 10 that we came up with. And but the one that I really like, and I think we need to spend more time on here, is the number 2, because we keep saying that that technology has a place. I keep hearing that people are saying that the data seems to be getting more complex. If the programs are getting more complex or complicated, if you're moving, say, from example, from a fairly, small project management office to suddenly your organization is doing a lot more projects than ever before, there's these changes that are having an impact on one of the core jobs which you do, which is the reporting side of it. So again, I've talked to a lot of people about this, and it came up on the PMO Managers Lunch because I was intrigued to see if anybody had actually already started to do this. And I think out of the 14 people around the table, I think there was probably about 3 or 4 that actually have a data analyst within their team. And again, it got me thinking, well, okay, so this is new. I used to be a PMO manager. I had to recruit into my team. What would this mean to me as a PMO manager thinking about a data analyst? What do I need to understand here? So this is this is a classic job spec for a data analyst, and one of the main things that stands out to me. I know some stuff about technical IT stuff, but I don't know that much. And it got me thinking about, well, from a PMO point of view, what do we need to understand about data in order to be able to get better at it? How do we get to know and understand about what a data analyst do so we can recruit the kind that we need? But equally, number one there is that we need to be able to understand that data. And I've always found it quite laughable, really, that I think many people go into PMO because of that main headline, which was to support and help organisations get better and program project managers. It never said anywhere that we had to be brilliant at data and data analysis. That was never a thing. Especially if you've been around this game as long as I have, it's never been the thing until relatively recently. So it's something that we know we need to get to grips with, just like all the other business stuff out there that's talking about big data this and all the rest of it. It's what does data mean to us and how are we going to tackle this going forward? But also, again, the tool thing comes up here. But the role thing comes up as well. I mean, like, look, this is the standard role for a data analyst. What else should that person have? Could you happily recruit for somebody today based on that job spec? Do you even know what half of it's about? Do you even know how to convert what it is that you want requirement-wise into the language of data analysts? It's an interesting one. I think it's going to be a thing that flies, but it's something else to get to grips with, which is just the nightmare, isn't it? Because we've got to get to grips with so many things. But hey, there's another one. So we also have talked about careers. So a lot of the stuff we've already looked at trend-wise was all about your PMO, your job within that PMO, the actual services, functions type of stuff. But I think we also need to remember that there's you in all of this, and throughout the year at Flashmob, you can't help but talk to people about the more the career stuff. Okay, some of the sessions can be that somebody's had a bad day at work, and the bad day is because some scenario or situation, and invariably the conversation does turn to things like soft skills. So how do you deal with some of this stuff? Because I think we get into the ins and outs of the processes, methods, tools, techniques, all the harder stuff of PMO. But I still see that, from a behavioural point of view, that I think people still have a lot of development to do. And that can mainly be due to the kind of PMO they may be working within today. But, based on that, I see that actually some of these areas that you may be, if you're wanting to develop more in PMO, I mean, if we just look as the one of the things I'm doing at the moment is releasing the benchmark report from my day job as people, and one of the things that really stood out for me was just how much the portfolio manager gets paid. They are the highest paid out of every single grouping. That's over program managers, project managers, consultants, PMO managers. It's the portfolio manager that is the highest paid role. Now, for some people, for some of you here, maybe thinking about that as a career possibility. And what I would say is that if for that to be a reality, you have to think about, well, what kind of behavioural stuff do program project managers have, the consultants have, because there's an expectation. But if you are going to be a high paid, one of the highest paid types of roles within PPM, that you do need that kind of senior management behavioural stuff as well, the leadership stuff. So I just got off track a little bit, but we come back to what you're seeing on the screen here. This is in a pub one night. We just asked people, what are the true technical skills of a PMO, and then what are the more behavioural things that people should be looking at in terms of their own development? Governance, technical wise, obviously it depends on PMO that you might be within, but equally from a career point of view, you may never be stuck in that same kind of PMO all your career. So, you may not be doing stuff like, I don't know, sort of portfolio stuff today, or you may not be doing the budget stuff, but actually it can be career limiting if a new opportunity that you want has a lot more of the budget stuff. So it's just some things to think about in terms of skills and development and all that kind of good stuff. So started the conversations about careers and all that kind of good stuff. One of the things that is kicked off in 2015 is this, which is the APM released the competency framework bit that sits with the PMO, as you can see there. I don't know if I'm going to get told off for sharing this, but I don't think it's really widely publicized unless you are some kind of member of APM. But I'm just going to quickly go over that because actually there's loads of these things that are out there, dotted about all over the internet. And one night we had a session about competency and competency frameworks and stuff like this. For you people that are not aware of it, basically it is about being able to understand what kind of PMO person I am, what level am I, what kind of skills level am I at, how do I compare to somebody who may be doing a similar role, where's my skill gaps, that kind of stuff. So this is just a collection. So there's the APM one. This was, again, if you came along to the competency event, if you didn't, have a look online because this some of this stuff is there. Some of it I didn't share, but if you see anything here that you want, you know where I am. Drop me a line. This is another one from a different place. So there's dotted around all over the place. So this is important for two things. One, for yourself. Two, if you are a PMO manager and you're thinking about development around your team. The list goes on and on. There's loads of weird and wonderful ones. But I think the bottom line is here that this is something that is very much something that you would do to fit within your current organization, which is fine. But what about development as a PMO professional as a general thing? But I don't necessarily just want to be developed to fit within my organizational's view of what a PMO is. Where is the industry standard? That bit potentially is missing. I'd love to hear from people about the APM one. If you have got it, if you've had a look at it, what do you think? Please drop us a line. I've got a note here from somebody that knows. Thank you, Stuart. The APM role profiles are only available if you pay, but the APM competencies are free to members, so that's the APM one. But like I said, if you've seen anything here that you like the look of, just want to have a bit more of a scout about, drop me a line. Let me try and help you. Okay, so that's the competency stuff, which I think we've got loads of things we could do there, which is, we need it, don't we? Wouldn't you like to know how you compare to Joe Bloggs in an organization that's a very similar size and industry sector to you? I think I certainly would. The thing that we did about careers was we did a whole session around development and CVs and stuff like that. So again, if you weren't there, you might have missed it. But this was just some key things that came out of that, which was, I suppose I did the first mini masterclass. It's what I do. It's my day job. The ins and outs of PMOs and recruiting them and all that kind of stuff. And this was just a thing of like what I see. This is my observations in my day job. And from a CV point of view. So just to give you some food for thought. This is not about you applying for jobs and moving jobs and stuff like that. It's just to give you an idea of things that you can think about. What I always see with people that are putting together a CV, and we know that PMOs can be quite difficult to define, and sometimes people don't even bother to do that. They will say that they're a PMO project analyst, no idea what kind of PMO, which is an interesting one for people organisation-wise that are trying to find PMO people, because it's one of the things that obviously they're trying to understand. Are you a project one? Are you a program one? Are you a portfolio one? Or are you none at all? So actually, it's I suppose a thing that you need to be conscious of. It's even when you're out there networking, for example, when you introduce yourself as a PMO person, I think you need to start being a little bit more explicit about what kind of PMO person that you are and what kind of PMO that you work within as well. We need to keep working on these people out there that just don't understand PMOs and therefore dismiss it. So interestingly, when you're looking at things to do with PMOs and talking to them about their PMOs, what has a big bearing is the complexity and size of PMO. Again, the big difference between, and this is a shout out to Eileen, who originally coined this phrase, you're either a pool or a pot, a PMO 1 or a PMO 2. which is a number of people that work within it. And that has a big difference to you being a PMO of many people working within that PMO. It has a different kind of bearing on what people perceive you being able to do in the PMO role. It's just, one of those things. But again, from a talking to a PMO professional's point of view, I always ask those simple questions. What kind of PMO it is? How many of you is there? What kind of projects are you doing? What's your main role? Yeah. So the other thing that people don't tend to do very clearly on things like their CV, or indeed things like LinkedIn, if you're using LinkedIn instead of actually, if you're not really looking for jobs and stuff, is not having a clear idea about what your services and functions are. And what we mean by the service and the function is basically if you do a lot around, say, planning, that's a service, and then the function could be things like that you maintain the MS project Gantt chart, or you actually get involved in requirements gathering, whatever. So it's that level of detail that people tend to miss, which again makes it incredibly difficult for people to try and work out what kind of PMO person you are. Okay. So and the other thing that we also see quite a bit as well is that people don't have a recognition of what their important skills are. And I've always said that there's kind of like a top 5 for PMO, regardless of what kind of PMO that you're in. And it's reporting, it's planning. We've seen the governance one on the other slide. It's the things like the resource management, and then it's things like the risk issues change stuff. Those are like your headlines. And if they're not somewhere in your CV or on LinkedIn, it kind of feels like they're buried a bit, which is an interesting thing. So it's almost like saying to you, do you recognize what are your top 5 skills as a PMO person from a technical point of view? So what I think is the most important transferable skill to develop? It's an interesting question. This is one from Eileen. A transferable skill, I think it is the business understanding side of stuff in PMO. I'm not quite sure if I got your question and totally understood it, Eileen, 100%. But one of the things that came up on the trends thing was actually, I think PMO people, if their PMOs are moving towards more of a portfolio thing, they do need to start understanding more about the business and about those generic business skills. And we also mentioned it in the trends about getting closer to other departments as well, which again is about understanding the wider business community, business landscape that you're working within. So from a transferable skill, that's what I would say, that it's the business stuff is becoming a lot more important, which again, you think about it from a PMO point of view, we have to get to grips with projects, programs, portfolio, and now you want us to understand the business. I'll tell you what, the PMO people in the future will be running these businesses because they know that much about everything. But it's I love it. I think it's a really interesting career, and I'm sure you do too. Final little slide. I've got probably about 7 minutes left. I'm going to try and answer some questions if I can at the end. But just finally, for me, just talking about the career stuff of you guys, is just trying to, understand, do you do enough thinking about where you're heading with this, or do you let it happen to you? I believe that PMO is, it's a career that is never going to, well, I say never, it's not going to go away. There's so many organizations out there that still will not even have a PMO. Never mind the changes that existing PMOs want to go through in terms of project into program, to portfolio, to enterprise-wide, strategic level, all these different kinds. And it would be a shame if you stayed within the same kind of setup throughout your life. Because I think there's probably so much more that you can get out of this by adding a different slant, by being in a slightly different position. I've said to you already about the different levels of seniority. The world really is your oyster in terms of PMO. But one thing that I will say is that I do believe that PMO people that are wanting to get to that top level of like portfolio management, as much as this kills me to say it, I think that you do have to have some delivery experience, i.e. being a project manager or a program manager. Now you can shoot me down for that, but I think it's probably one of the only ways that you can not only gain some real hands-on experience of a delivery, but also help you develop those behavioural skills to be able to pull off that job at a senior level. Be interesting to have that debate. I'll see you at the next flash mob. We can have a chat about that. The other thing is understanding your skills gap, but again, how do we understand what our skills gaps are? We need to think about this competency stuff. The answers are in there somewhere, but again, is it possible? Because we always say that PMO people are all different from each other. I think fundamentally there are some things that are the same, and that's the functions and services, regardless of where you're working or what level that you're at. I think some of those things change, don't change. And again, it's about trying to understand that and seeing how we can go and move practically with it to try and understand, well, what's the skills, and then therefore what's the gaps. And essentially, it's just is think about the challenge that that there are. Like I said, there's opportunities there. I think PMO is it's exciting time. Project management is still undergoing so much change. So how can the PMO not be in that same kind of space, if not more so? Because we're not actually limiting ourselves to projects and programs anymore. With this portfolio conversation, it all sounds very much like a senior business level, and I'm not too sure. My jury's out on this at the moment. I'm not 100% sure whether actually portfolio should be something that is lumped in with projects and programs. But again, it's just an opinion. Shoot me down if you want. But this is the kind of stuff that I'm hearing. So we have got just a few minutes left, and what we've got here, a lot of great thoughts. If you could only do one, then what is the one that you would go for? Okay. Bearing in mind I don't work in a PMO anymore, but I'm really interested in how the data analyst capability within a PMO could actually help get away from some of the drudgery, which frees up the time to do some of the sexy stuff, and whether that be looking at change management or looking at portfolio stuff or whatever sexy is in your world. I think we need to get this problem sorted out with what actually takes up more man hours than any other thing that a PMO does. And it's all around the data and the reporting stuff, So that's the one thing that I would get. And somebody just, disagree. It's not a data analyst, it's an MI analyst. I mean, yeah, okay, whatever. But you know what I'm talking about. It's the person that kind of, is all into that kind of subject. So another question, do you think that if we never get away from the admin, that the PMO will always struggle with credibility? No, and part of me thinks that you'll never get away from admin, because actually, I think most jobs on the planet have elements of admin anyway. So why would you want to get rid of something that essentially is useful to your customers? Your customers actually use it and engage with it and want it. So the question should be more about, what are the, I hate to use the word and people are going to kill me for saying this, but the value add bit, you've got to work out what is the value add for the PMO that you're in and the PMO that it's customers that it's serving. Because I just think it's crazy that you would say that we're not doing admin anymore because it's beneath us. And actually, you need to think about how you package that and sell that, because it's a service and commodity that people want. So perhaps you want to think about how you can still offer that kind of service and it's still available, but you need a headcount within your PMO that purposely deals with that kind of stuff, which frees up your people that are really experienced to get on with the things in hand that really add that value. So my last thought would be trying to understand is, from your own point of view, from your PMO, how does it actually add value and what do people really want out of it anyway? I know, and somebody's just said that I've said the word value because I banned it. I did actually ban it because I think if you listen to a lot of people at PMO, people talking about we need to show the added value, we need to show the benefits of what we do. And my argument back was, I think you need to define what those things like value and benefits are, because I think you need to stop talking in words that don't really mean anything. You need to start telling people exactly what these valuable things are, what these benefits are. Okay, so we come to the end. Hopefully you enjoyed our first go at doing a webinar. We want to do more of these kind of things, and I don't want to do them all. I would really love it if any of you are out there that really like the idea of being potentially interviewed or even hosting one of these things yourselves on a PMO topic. Let's get PMO Flashmob out there for the people that can't make it in London, Scotland, or in the north of England. There's people around the world keep dropping me lines saying, can we do a flash mob in like out in Mongolia? This is probably the kind of thing that we can do. So if you're interested in supporting PMO Flashmob in that way, you know where I am, drop me a line. But thank you very much for dialing in. I hope it was a good use of your lunchtime. Enjoy your sandwich, and I hope to see you at another flash mob in the future. Okay, take care everybody.